We didn't see the red flags until it was too late. That feeling, that gut punch of realization, is what makes some of the most compelling characters in fiction so dangerous. They're the ones we root for, cheer on, and idolize, only to discover that their moral compass was never meant to align with ours. The thrill of misidentification and the beauty of characters we shouldn't have liked isn't accidental. Writers craft them to seduce our sympathies, to play on our desire for justice, power, or charisma, and few characters embody this as dangerously as Light Yagami from Death Note. At first glance, Light seems like the perfect protagonist. Brilliant, disciplined, and morally driven, he is a high-achieving student who stumbles across a tool of unimaginable power, the Death Note. To many viewers, Light appears heroic. He's strikingly articulate and possessed of a clear vision. Eliminate criminals and cleanse the world of evil. It's tempting to cheer for him. After all, who doesn't want a world free of murderers, rapists, and abusers? The fantasy is intoxicating, but this is exactly the trap. Light's charisma masks his psychopathy, and our admiration blinds us to the danger underneath his flawless look. The genius of Light Yagami's character is that he is morally persuasive without being morally correct. Early episodes position him as a savior with a modern-day executioner fighting for justice. We laugh at his clever manipulations, marvel at his deductions, and yet every victory he achieves comes at the expense of his own humanity. The audience, seduced by his intelligence, often overlooks the mounting evidence of his narcissism. Light doesn't just kill criminals, he kills anyone who threatens his ego, anyone who questions his authority, anyone who might see through the illusion he's created. It's a slow reveal of a man who believes the ends justify any means, even if those means require him to sacrifice his morality, and ultimately his soul. The tragedy of Light's story is how easily audiences misinterpret him. We cheer for the wrong reasons. We admire his cunning without acknowledging the cruelty it conceals. We fail to recognize the warning signs because the story frames his actions as righteous. And this is the terror of misliked characters. They make us complicit in our own deception. Every plot twist that shows Light's descent into ruthlessness is a mirror held up to the audience, reflecting the uncomfortable truth. We were seduced by someone we should have distrusted. Light Yagami's charm also lies in his duality. On one hand, he's a top student, a dutiful son, a charismatic young man with a moral mission. On the other hand, he's a manipulator, a murderer, and a megalomaniac in training. This duality is precisely why audiences misfire emotionally. The thrill of this misjudgment is exactly why discussions about Light Yagami are still so passionate, years after Death Note first aired. He challenges us to question our instincts. Why do we root for him? What lines of his behavior did we excuse, or even celebrate? How quickly admiration can turn to horror when the truth comes into focus. After examining the manipulation of Light Yagami, it's tempting to think we might have seen the archetype of a character who seduces our admiration despite moral bankruptcy. But the beauty of characters we shouldn't like doesn't end in the halls of a Japanese high school. Across genres and cultures, similar patterns emerge, and one of the most infamous examples is Tyler Durden from Fight Club. Just like Light, Tyler is a character audiences are not meant to truly root for, but somehow we still do. We didn't see the red flags until it was too late. Tyler enters the story as the perfect fantasy of rebellion. Confident, charismatic, unbound by societal rules, and dripping with that energy that makes him irresistible to both the protagonist and the audience. He promises liberation from predictability of modern life, a way to reclaim masculinity, identity, and purpose in a world that feels pointless. At first, he seems like a hero, but that is precisely the danger. Tyler is a figure disguised as a messiah. His genius lies in how he mirrors the desires of the audience. He verbalizes frustrations most of us suppress. He challenges the rules and norms we quietly resent. He offers solutions that feel empowering, if extreme. And in this reflection, we see ourselves, even if we don't like to admit it. Yet this identification is the trap. Unlike Light Yagami, whose danger is primarily intellectual and manipulative, Tyler's menace is disordered. He doesn't just challenge morality in abstract terms. He acts, and his actions escalate into chaos, violence, and destruction. The charm that makes him captivating is inseparable from the harm he causes. The critical turning point, often missed by viewers, is realizing Tyler's philosophy is destructive. On the surface, these lines feel inspiring. Who hasn't wanted to break free from societal pressures or personal dissatisfaction? But Tyler doesn't stop at personal liberation. He weaponizes discontent, creating Fight Club and later Project Mayhem, a systematic campaign of anarchy. The audience is seduced into encouraging his rebellion, yet each victory comes at the cost of innocent people and a moral framework that we implicitly trust. It's the red flag we overlook. Freedom without responsibility is not freedom, it's tyranny. Tyler Durden also thrives on ambiguity. Unlike Light Yagami, Tyler's intelligence is emotionally infectious. He's chaotic, funny, dangerous, and charismatic all at once, and because we are drawn to the energy he exudes, we rationalize or ignore the red flags. The escalation from underground fights to public terror, the manipulation of impressionable followers, the way he dissolves the protagonist's agency. The ultimate tragedy of Tyler Durden is that audiences want him to be good. We overlook the warning signs because we desire his freedom, his charisma, and his defiance. Just as with Light Yagami, the story is structured to lure us into complicity. We cheer at the wrong moments, laugh at the wrong jokes, and feel inspired by the wrong ideology, all because Tyler's appeal taps into a deeper, seductive desire for rebellion. In the end, Tyler Durden is a mirror of our susceptibility. He forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. We often confuse charisma with morality, confidence with ethical clarity, and rebellion with righteousness. The amusement of misinterpreting him is part of what keeps Fight Club compelling decades after its release. Moreover, the lesson is clear. Idolizing a character doesn't make them heroic. It makes us human. Tyler Durden is the anarchist mirror we peer into, seeing not only his chaos, but our willingness to embrace it. After exploring the chaotic charisma of Tyler Durden, it's easy to think we've reached the limit of morally seductive characters, yet some figures take it a step further by disarming perfection. Patrick Bateman from American Psycho is a character audiences are fascinated by, even as he carries the darkness we should never condone. He is the ultimate example of a character we weren't supposed to like, but did, at least at first glance. We didn't see the red flags until it was too late. On the surface, Patrick Bateman is enviable, handsome, wealthy, impeccably dressed, and living the kind of life most people dream of. He navigates Manhattan with effortless charm, attending exclusive parties, dining at elite restaurants, and radiating confidence. For audiences, it's tempting to admire him. He's the embodiment of success in a world obsessed with appearances. And yet, Bateman is a narcissist, a sociopath, and a killer. The horror comes from how easily we are tempted by what seems admirable. Patrick's anger isn't chaotic like Tyler Durden. He presents himself as the perfect socialite, but every aspect of his life is performative. Take, for example, the infamous scene where he lures a colleague into his apartment under the guise of a friendly drink, only to brutally murder him. The casual cruelty is jarring, yet in the early narrative, it's almost drowned out by the ritualized perfection of his morning routine. Meticulous skincare, precise workouts, and carefully cataloged possessions. Early in the story, it's easy to overlook the subtle signs of his psychopathy, the obsessive attention to detail, the shallow empathy, the cold detachment. These are traits that, in a different context, might even be celebrated with efficiency and ambition, but in Bateman's case, they are signs of something far darker. What makes Patrick Bateman so compelling is that his monstrosity is hidden in plain sight. The story frames him as the peak of 1980s success culture, making his crimes seem almost like exaggerations of his lifestyle rather than the atrocities they are. Whether he's brutally killing a prostitute or a homeless man, the narrative contrasts these acts with his obsession over dining etiquette, cocktail recipes, and social status. This framing tricks audiences into admiring him for his qualities. He also exposes the dangers of audience complicity. So are we fascinated because he's a monster, or because he reflects the very traits we idolize in our culture? Consider when he actually explains the difference between business card stocks or critiques of restaurant menus. These trivial obsessions make him relatable, distracting us from the casual escalating violence he commits in the same breath. Our misinterpretation is deliberate. The story allows us to admire a monster while gradually revealing the depth of his depravity. Another level of Bateman's complexity is his self-awareness. He knows he is empty, yet he cannot change. His commentary on consumer culture, social hierarchies, and superficiality is often darkly humorous. In scenes where he ridicules colleagues for their ordinary conversations or critiques the mediocrity of Manhattan nightlife, we laugh, even as these moments highlight his moral bankruptcy. He's both the critic and the perpetrator of the world he despises. In the end, Patrick Bateman is a masterclass in misinterpreted character design. The audience's initial admiration is a trap, a lesson in how easily surface-level appeal can mask profound immorality. Following Patrick Bateman, it's easy to think we've seen the full range of dangerous characters, but some villains captivate audiences in a different way through chaos and unpredictability. The Joker is one of the most striking examples. He's a character we're drawn to, even when every instinct tells us we shouldn't be. Once again, we're faced with someone we weren't supposed to like, but somehow, we do. We didn't notice the red flags until it was too late. From his first scenes in The Dark Knight, the Joker commands attention. In the opening bank robbery, he kills members of his own crew to maintain control, all while delivering darkly humorous phrases. His unpredictability, boldness, and sense of showmanship are captivating. Audiences are entertained by his cleverness and audacity, drawn into his perspective before fully understanding the danger he represents. This is the genius of his characterization. He makes chaos interesting, and moral collapse seem almost clever. The Joker's appeal comes from his unpredictability. He follows no rules, moral or social, which makes him mesmerizing. In Joker 2019, Arthur Fleck's transformation shows how a man pushed to the edge can embrace violence and anarchy, turning pain and neglect into a weaponized persona. We are drawn to his freedom and the idea that he can do anything and escape consequence, yet that freedom comes with destruction, manipulation, and terror for everyone around him. The Joker also manipulates perception in ways most characters do not. He does not rely on wealth, intelligence. He is unapologetically himself, no matter how violent. In The Killing Joke, his psychological torment of Commissioner Gordon and Barbara Gordon forces readers to confront how quickly intelligence and wit can be weaponized. He's both entertainer and predator, trickster and murderer, keeping audiences engaged even as they feel they should recoil. One of the most unsettling aspects of the Joker is how he reflects our own complicity. Stories invite us into his world, making us admire his cleverness and even understand his critique of social structures. In The Dark Knight, his speech to the mob, undermining their sense of order, tempts audiences to appreciate his intellect, even as he orchestrates murder and chaos. The Joker is also defined by contrast. Batman represents order, morality, and restraint, while the Joker embodies desire unbound by rules, seeking disruption and power without accountability. This opposition makes him a mirror to our fascination with rebellion taken to its extreme. We admire his cleverness, laugh at his audacity, and feel the thrill of his confidence, even while every instinct warns us to fear him. After the loud, unpredictable chaos of the Joker, Joe Goldberg from You feels deceptively gentle. His danger is disguised as devotion, his obsession dressed up as romance, and that is exactly why so many viewers fell for him, even though he is someone we were never supposed to admire. In this story, Joe appears romantic, thoughtful, and deeply sensitive. When he meets Guinevere Beck, he seems like the ideal partner who's attractive, articulate, and protective. Early in the series, audiences hear his inner thoughts, positioned as insight into a misunderstood complex mind. This narrative choice encourages empathy, even as he crosses boundaries that should alarm viewers immediately. In the first season, for example, Joe stalks Beck's social media, monitors her friends, and even breaks into her apartment to help her. Our initial reaction is often framed as understanding or even amusement, a dangerous trap. His obsession is presented as devotion. However, unlike Patrick Bateman, whose violence is shocking and overt, or the Joker, whose chaos is dramatic, Joe hides behind normalcy. He carries kindness and intelligence with manipulative behavior, making his actions feel personal and justified. In the first season, Joe manipulates Beck's relationships, isolates her from friends, and ultimately kills those who threaten his control, all while maintaining the appearance of a devoted boyfriend. We watch and think he only did it because he cares, when in reality, his actions are rooted in control, entitlement, and sociopathy. What makes Joe particularly compelling is how the story positions the audience alongside him. Through voiceover narration, we see the world from his perspective. This encourages empathy even as his behavior is morally wrong. We see someone struggling with love, loneliness, and trauma, and are tempted to excuse his darker tendencies. The genius of his character is that the audience's understanding becomes his camouflage. Joe's misinterpretation also exposes society's fascination with romance and obsession. Many viewers root for him because the show frames his stalking and controlling behavior as romantic intensity. For instance, when he meticulously tracks Beck's emails and texts, it's portrayed as concern rather than intrusion. Meanwhile, his red flags include jealousy, manipulation, psychological abuse, and murder. All are present, but audiences often overlook them because they're embedded in intimacy and vulnerability. Joe embodies the archetype of the charming predator, showing how perspective can seduce empathy towards someone we should fear. Without close observation, Joe exists as a bookstore employee who seems unthreatening. To his victims, he's manipulative, controlling, and deadly. This split mirrors the audience's complicity. We admire his public persona while witnessing his private horrors. Ultimately, Joe Goldberg is a warning about the power of perspective. Morality is not about relatability, intelligence, or charm. It is about accountability and empathy. Audiences misread him because the story encourages identification with his inner world, concealing the severity of his actions. The red flags were always present. His obsession, manipulation, and lack of moral boundaries were never hidden. They were simply easy to overlook because of how relatable and humanized he is. Joe Goldberg reminds us that villainy doesn't always announce itself with spectacle or violence. It can be quiet, intimate, and disturbingly familiar. Our fascination with him is uncomfortable but revealing, showing how easily perspective and empathy can be misused. In the end, Joe Goldberg is a masterclass in misinterpretation, and when that realization hits, it forces reflection on why we root for the wrong people, and how easily perceived vulnerability can obscure danger.